on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
It's like every day's Christmas, to be honest with you. In my first 2 weeks out, every time somebody did something nice for me, I'd start crying. The dissonance between the hatred that I lived in and the love that I'm shown now and continue to be shown.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show on a Friday with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
Mark Dawson, if you're watching on YouTube, is wearing his hat today. I remember we used to do this at Soho when we worked together years ago. He'd turn up in a hat and he'd say, "I'm having a bad hair day, James."
Yeah.
So, I think you're having a bad hair day.
I'm having a bad hair month, but then that's me and everybody else who hasn't been able to go to a hairdresser for 3 months.
Yeah,
so,
these
yes.
headphones actually cover up my sins. My hair starts curling down here when it is curling now. I keep saying to my daughter, cut my hair, but I think she's more interested in, I don't know, her A-levels or something trivial.
Yeah, a bit weird, your daughter cutting your hair. That's odd, things you do in Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, she's done it before, and she did it all right, actually. And I don't really care that much about my hair. Okay, look, we've got a few things to talk about. It's a foundation special. We're going to go through and announce the winners of the SPF Foundation applications, but we have a fantastic interview with Jeffrey P. Frye, somebody who a few weeks ago was in federal prison in the United States serving a 12-year sentence. He has obviously recovered himself in prison. He started writing novels, handwriting them obviously in his cells while all this terrible violence and institutional drug taking, everything went on around him. And this interview is about that time, and it's about him getting his life together and looking forward. So it's a really good interview with a lovely man. I say a lovely man, obviously he's had a past where he went through a period not being so lovely, and he talks about that as well. So that's coming up in a moment. But before then, I just want to pick up, Mark, we mentioned that I was going into a BookBub featured deal last week with one of the books that we, first in a series of 8, that we market with Fuse Books, and you gave me a few hints about what I should have set up. I was slightly nervous about, the price. You set the price up, and it's got to be there. The last thing in the world anybody wants to do is to be awarded one of these precious BookBub featured deals, which you have to apply for and go through an editorial board, and then let them down by not having everything in place. So I double and triple checked, but everything was in place. And the downloads, I think you said to me, be prepared for 25,000, 30,000 downloads. We actually recorded 42,000, a shade under 42,000 downloads, which was incredible. Sort of 32,000, I think, on the day itself, 24,000 in America alone, which was amazing. But what's been even more amazing, because that's all very well, you're giving the book away for free and you don't really know how many of those people are going to like it, read it even, like it, and then move on to the next one and actually give you some money at some point for books that you're selling. But in the days that have followed, and this was the 18th of February, this feature deal went out. Today's date is 26th of February, I think.
Yeah.
The page reads and the book sales have just gone up and up and up since that featured deal. Obviously, I'm pushing it with ads, and I've got quite a lot of ads working now, and we've got more money coming in to make sure we maintain this. But I'll show you a chart on the screen, which I'll give to John to put up now. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the big blue spike is the free books. What you can't see, because it's changed the scale to 40,000 downloads, you can't see below that the yellow on the right, which used to be 30 books a day or so for this series, and is now 80 to 95 books a day, but you can see very clearly underneath the page reads ramping up from, I think they started about 30,000 page reads a day, maybe less than that, actually fewer than that, I should say, now up to 90,000 page reads a day for the last 3 days, as these people clearly from the BookBub downloads have started reading through on Kindle Unlimited and buying the book. And gosh, you do occasionally, do you not, Mark, see people saying, "Oh, BookBub deal's really worth it. They work in the same way they used to work." I can only give you my first-hand experience and just say, yes, they do.
Yes, they do. We covered this in a bit of detail last week, but it's good to see what the tail has continued to to accrue or to wag, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, you'll see that for a while. The people will continue into the series, and it's a 7-book series, I think 8-book series, if I'm not mistaken. So that will continue as people go through those books. Some will go all the way to the end. Others might read a couple. Others might read just the one that they've bought or downloaded. So yeah, it's going to be it will be a significant moment. Often you do often see when authors are starting out and they land a BookBub, that can be one of the triggers for sustained success. So yeah, we'll just have to see. But it's a very encouraging week or two for those books. Yeah.
Now, in terms of advertising spend, so I'm running mainly Facebook ads. I'm running some Amazon ads now as well. Actually, I started on the day before the BookBub promo for this series. Obviously, I was spending something like 35. This is UK pounds, so $45 odd a day, and ending up with a profit of the 75 to 80 pounds, so knocking on $100 a day. So somewhere between 30% and 50%, or varied around. A good day, it's 30% of spend. A bad day, it's 50% of income, rather. Suddenly, we're getting £513, I think, was yesterday's income, which is $650 income. I've raised my spending a bit, but how much should I be raising my advertising spend based on that income now?
Well, as long as you're comfortable that it's still generating the same kind of proportional profit. So I would be looking to kind of amp it up a little bit and make sure, then leave it for 2 or 3 days, make sure that the profit continues to go in the right direction, and then increase it a bit more. That's the. I mean, don't get too excited and start dumping $500 a day immediately on those ads, because that's a recipe for disaster. But if you do it slowly and always checking that you're getting the result that you want, then that's the way to go.
Yeah, and you always do talk about scaling up slowly. I think you give me a tip in the past, and you teach our students about 20% is quite a good scale up rule.
Yeah, I wouldn't go too much more than that. You have a risk of confusing the algorithm if you suddenly dump tons more impressions into the mix. So just do it a little bit more carefully.
Yeah. Finding the box set, by the way, is going very well on Facebook ads at the moment. I think I had an 11 pence a day click cost, which is very good. Although a lot of the clicks have been mid-20s recently as well, so it's been quite varied. But the box set certainly seems to be doing well.
Yeah, very good.
Good. Okay. Sorry.
I was to say, we should probably say, I think by the time this goes out, I might have pulled my finger out my arse and actually post something about this. That we probably should be looking for another author, shouldn't we? So bringing someone else into the fold. So we have a science fiction. So you've demonstrated that the method has worked very well with science fiction. It's definitely working with thrillers, with building those up. I think the next one we'd like to do is paranormal romance. That's the something along those lines is something that we're interested in. So I don't quite know whether I would have posted, probably would have done by now, but if people are interested in talking to us about taking over a series that they've got, or one that they're thinking of writing, and seeing if we can, or well, I say we, James with me giving some hints and tips there again, if that's something that you're interested in, then drop James an email, I guess.
I think we can be a little bit fussy here, because we got overwhelmed by offers last time, which was great and nice for us, and in the end it looks like we've made a good choice in the author we picked up. However, I would say I'd be looking for a series of 6 at least. Really, 2 or 3 is probably not enough for us at this stage.
I wouldn't say that. I think you start with 2 or 3, but with the intention that others are added to it. Okay. I wouldn't personally have any kind of limits on that. I think 1 book is probably not enough. But you'd want multiple books. I don't think I wouldn't put anything. I wouldn't reject applications, because you might find you get an amazing author who would be brilliant, and they don't get considered. So I'd leave it fairly open. We have processes in place for kind of deciding which of those authors we need to investigate further, don't we? In terms of readers and things like that. So it's easy for me to say because I'm not doing it, but I would be rather more inclined to be liberal rather than too prescriptive at this stage.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, what we're looking for again is if you've got some ability to self-publish, not something you hate, and you can see that the uptick, once you put the effort in, you should be self-publishing. There's no question about it. That's our ethos. That's what Mark and I live and breathe every day. If you absolutely cannot do it, you can't make it work, it confuses you, you don't like it, you don't want to do it, but your books are good, then come and talk to us, because ultimately we're going to be sharing profits with you. And there's no point in us doing that if you can do this by yourself. But if it's definitely not for you, and I think the two authors we have for two...
Yeah, sorry, James. I was just saying, probably one thing to add in there is that you just can't do it. So either you don't want to or you can't, and your books aren't selling as well as you think they should. So, because what James and I will not do is we won't take on any author who we don't think we can at least double what they've done. Because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense for the author to take that deal, because it's a 50-50 split. So we want to make sure you're at least making what you would have made without having to do that advertising. Now, of course, what we hope is that you'll make much more. And so far with, the authors we've had so far, that has been the case. But there isn't any point in, if you're making 15 grand a month, probably you're doing okay.
Yeah.
You might not want to come to us, but if you're if you're kind of not quite where you want to be, then drop us a line and we'll have a look and see what you got. What's the email, James?
So if you check out the community group, we'll post in after this recording in the next couple of days before this goes out next Friday, and we'll have a thread in the community group with the information there. We might even set up an actual landing page with that. So I'll have to think about how to do that. But just check out the community group and look for Fuse Books. Post be from Mark. Okay, now we are all about self-publishing, and that's the main thing that we push. And one of the things we do once a year is we award foundation grants to authors who are committed writers, good writers with a proven ability there, but simply don't have the means to develop the marketing side of things. So it is an investment, no question about that, in covers and editing and so on. It all adds up at the beginning, and some people simply can't afford it, particularly in this current climate. So we run a foundation. I say we run a foundation. I do virtually nothing for it now, and Mrs. Dawson does everything, and she's done a really fantastic job of sorting through a lot of applications. And you can imagine it's quite a tricky process, and then announcing them very nicely into the groups. And the foundation itself has grown under Lucy's stewardship to include a number of members of our community who donate money into it. So not only is it us self-publishing formulas, me, Mark and John, putting money into this, it's also Ricardo at Reedsy. It's also Written Word Media. And it's now individual authors who've come forward, people like Mark Recklau, you'll see in a moment, and Lucy Score. So let's go through the authors who we've been awarded, and you'll see them come up on screen if you're watching on a video format. And we'll start with JL Morgan. Do you know, she's a paranormal romance writer, Mark. Hey, JL.
There are three of them this time, I think. Yep.
This is not what this is about. JL is sponsored by Reedsy. Thank you very much indeed, the team at Reedsy, Emmanuel and Ricardo in particular. Tanis Laidlaw, there she is, a foundation winner. It's a nice trophy, that. We should get those. Done. Rights and Mystery is sponsored by Perry Wilson. Thank you very much indeed, Perry. This is Melissa Circia. Go on, you try.
Oh, you've nailed it. You've had about 3 different attempts, so one of those must have been right. So there's nothing more I can add.
Well, Melissa writes in urban fantasy and paranormal romance, and she is also sponsored by Reedsy. Next, we have Jeffrey P. Frye. Stay tuned for Jeffrey's interview in a moment. Straight out of federal prison. He writes, not surprisingly perhaps, crime fiction, sponsored by us here at the Self-Publishing Formula. Emma Shelford, who writes in urban fantasy, is sponsored by Written Word Media. Louise V.N. Liebenberg, who writes in non-fiction, self-help, sponsored by Thibault Meurice. I think I'm getting this right. Some of it's right. Some of it might not be right. Here is V.F. Streets, a crime thriller writer, sponsored by our friend in Malta, Mark Recklau. Thank you so much, Mark. Here's Eric Stever, who's a multi-genre writer and is sponsored by Tony Moyle. Thank you very much indeed, Tony. Here is Britt Andrews, who writes in romance and is sponsored by our friend in PA, USA, Lucy Score. Thank you, Lucy. And Mr. Lucy, who secretly we know is actually called Tim, but don't tell anyone else that. Scarlett Braden Moss, Writes cozy thriller and poetry, sponsored by us here at the Self-Publishing Formula. Have we got to 11 yet? I'm not sure when this is going to end. Tessa Kelly, who writes in cozy mystery and sponsored by Dawn Brooks. Thank you very much indeed, Dawn. Okay, that is the list. I think that's 11 of them. Thank you so much indeed again to our sponsors. Fantastic of so many people who've obviously enjoyed some success in the self-publishing bubble, if you want to call it that, that's happened over the last few years, and are looking to give back as long. It's not a bubble. No. Bubble does imply it's going to burst. Yes. The rise of self-publishing, the transition.
A dot-com bubble. This isn't a tulip bubble. If you want to go back further, but no, this isn't a bubble. This is a movement.
It's a movement.
This is a way of life, James.
Movement. It is, but they want to give back, which is fantastic. And so everyone from Ricky and team at Written Word Media and Mark and Lucy and Perry and Dawn, thank you so much indeed. So we will dip in and out over the next year or so to see how our authors get on. We're not going to put pressure on them, of course. I'm not going to phone them up in 12 months and say, show me your results. But in the next couple of years, it takes a little while to get traction going. I tell you what we will do, and I will remember to message her in the next week or so. We'll get Elle Thorpe back on here because I know that she has got some traction going with her career now. She was one of our foundation winners last year. So we'll get Elle back on here to talk us through how she approached everything and the success that she's had. And we will at some point start working towards next year's, probably a bit early to apply now, but on our website you will find the tab and the details of how to do that.
You can apply. I mean, Lucy keeps an eye on them, but I mean, we had hundreds of applications this year. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was a good, at least 500, I would have thought. It was pretty popular.
And there may be, and the other thing we should say is if you wanted to sponsor a place, just drop us a line, support at selfpublishingformula.com or mark at selfpublishingformula.com and let us know. Yeah, well, I think we gave away $45,000 of material and whatever, $45,000 worth of stuff to our authors this time. It'd be nice to see that upped a little bit for next year. Good. Okay. Well, should we talk to one of the recipients? His name is Jeffrey P. Frye. Lovely guy. I think, as you hear in the interview, still adjusting, and it is quite a sharp adjustment you can only imagine from the institutional situation that he found himself in to real life. Actually, the week he's had a pretty tough week as well with his family. But we got this interview done, and it was delightful to speak to him. So let's hear from Jeffrey P. Frye, and then Mark and I will be back for a chat.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Jeffrey Frye, welcome to the Self-Publishing Formula. I'm delighted to say that you are a recipient of one of the SPF Foundation grants. You're a winner of one of those applicants, which I'm really excited about. So first of all, your reaction to that? You excited? You're getting on the platform now? Oh,
it's amazing. I use the analogy that it's akin to taking a man who stands in the surf fishing for a living with a cane pole and giving him a pole, lures, a boat, and a map of all of the hot spots of where to go. And so I'm really I'm humbled that I got chosen out of all of these different people, little old me. So yes, I'm very excited about it.
Great. Well, you have a very interesting backstory, Jeffrey. So we're going to hear all about that, a bit about your writing, and then we'll look forward to how you plan to use the resources that are now at your fingertips. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And some people listening to this may not know exactly what's happened to you in the last few years, but it's quite something.
Well, I became a writer in federal prison in 2012. My mother, I was at the United States Penitentiary in Lewisburg, and I received 7 20-year sentences for 7 unarmed bank robberies that happened. I was arrested in January of 2009, and it was the result of an addiction and just beautifully incoherent thinking. No gun, no mask, no violence.
Just walking into a bank and asking for money.
Yeah, and they were stupider than I was and gave it to me.
Yeah.
So pretty much. So yes, and it was just it's hard to make sense of illogical behavior. So I'm not even going to waste our time and try. But it was just a result of an addiction. It cost me everybody that I loved. It wasn't just my freedom, but it launched me into a world that is a subculture, a federal prison. The public likes to focus on Club Fed, but there's actually 3 custody levels, and Club Fed is low. And the only time I saw Club Fed was when I was chained on a bus and we passed by it. But there's low, medium, and high. And high are the United States penitentiaries. And there's about 15 of them, ADX Supermax being one of them out in the mountain in Colorado. And that's where I did my time in various pens. And they're very volatile. So
yeah, we'll hear a bit about that. I do remember something, actually, because I haven't read your notes. When John and I tour the States, we do quite a lot of driving around. And I always take John off to quirky little aviation places. And we were on the road from San Diego to Las Vegas for 20 books last year, or year before, I guess. And we pulled in at Victorville, which is where they keep the Boeing 747s from British Airways. And all those 737-8 Maxes were on the ground at the time.
They have a graveyard in the desert there.
Yeah, so we visited that. And I remember very clearly driving back out to the highway and seeing this amazing, very neat, but very sort of awesome looking prison by the road, quite a big estate. And we drove out onto the road. I had no idea that was one of the places that you were held.
Yes.
Wow.
I was at Victorville. Is interesting. There's a phenomenon called the Santa Ana winds, and they come down, I guess, out of the San Bernardino Mountains every day. And they used to have a windsock that would denote the level of wind that day and whether we were allowed to be outside. But Victorville there was no grass there at all. It was all sand. And when you walked the track, you would see the San Bernardino Mountains and the snow in the mountains in the distance. It was pretty bleak. It's definitely the heroin capital of the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons.
Wow.
And when you would go to breakfast, there would be junkies out in front of the chow hall looking either to cop heroin or to rob somebody so they could get their morning fix. This is in prison now.
Wow.
It's just absolutely crazy. But something neat that did happen to me there was I was sitting on the computer one day, and an older black guy with long dreads came and stood next to me and said, "I heard you're the writer." And I said, "Well, that depends who you ask." Actually, I'd done a couple books for Murder Slim at that point. It was 2014. And anyway, his name is Tupac Shakur, goes by Doc because he's a doctor of acupuncture, but he was Tupac's dad. And him and I became close. Wow. He had a book that he wanted me to edit, and he had a little writers group of some guys who basically wrote hood novels or erotic novels, just and went and sat in the library once a week and called it a group. But they had some people from Apple Valley in the community that came in, and he asked me if I would talk to them and basically tell them how I got from there to here with getting published. And I did that, and him and I became friends in the process of that, Doc and I. And we're two polar opposites. He's a black supremacist and kind of on some kill whitey time, been down for 35 years, and I'm whitey. So, but we clicked and we became friends, and we had a shared passion of writing. So that was, I can't say that I enjoyed meeting him and becoming friends with him, because you meet people throughout your life and you kind of collect them like treasures. I don't know, would be a good example.
Yeah. And
he is one of those treasures in the box. He's I don't know that he'll ever get out. He's been down 35 years, and he's part of a sect called the Black Liberation Army, right, which is kind of like the Black Panthers on steroids. And he's in a security threat group. Even in prison, he still gets his mail in a batch once a week, his emails in a batch once a week, because he's so monitored.
Right.
Some neat stories. He was at Lompoc in 1994, and the warden, Tupac, was coming to see him, and the warden came and asked him if Tupac would come in and give a concert in the prison. And he asked him, and Tupac came in and did a concert on the yard of the United States Penitentiary at Lompoc in 94. And then about about 6 months later, he was shot dead in Las Vegas.
Yeah. How did you get out then? Because 20 years, I'm guessing you didn't serve the full 20 years of you. I mean, but they were concurrent sentences, presumably.
Yeah, they were concurrent. It felt like 40. Let me just say that, James. But I did 12 years,
12.
And I did. I worked in law before I went off the reservation and did all that stupid stuff. And I'm a paralegal, and I basically had a little company that sold services to attorneys. So I'm sitting in a cell, I guess the end of March, and they've locked us down for COVID, and it's indefinite. And I have to give a shout out to coffee once again, because I took my coffee and 11 sheets of paper, and that's a chapter in Riley, by the way. And I wrote a motion for compassionate release to the judge who sentenced me 12 years before. Excuse me. And I mailed it off to the court. Never heard anything. I'm standing at my door on November 30th and looking out into the empty cell house. We've been locked down. I'm in a very bad situation with the cellmate and cannot get out of it. And I see my case manager coming across the cell house, hustling his way towards my cell. And usually you can't find this guy with a search warrant. I mean, this guy hides in his office in the back like a good bureaucrat. And he comes and opens the door and he says, the judge has granted the motion you filed for compassionate release, and he's commuted your sentence to time served.
Wow.
And we have 2 weeks to get you out of here. And that was it. And it was over, and this brand new life began. That was about 12 weeks ago.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. I want to ask you about, you're obviously in a very bad place, Jeffrey, and you talked about the addiction, ended up doing these robberies, ended up in state prison. Presumably it was in prison that you've recovered yourself. You've got away from the addiction and found yourself on a more level playing field. All that happened in state prison?
It's so cliche, but I'm going to say it. My mother died, and there's consequences that you don't know about in addiction and bad decisions. It doesn't necessarily have to be an addiction, but when you make decisions, it's like throwing a rock in a pond. And one of my consequences was that my mother and father stopped speaking to me for the last 15 years of their life. So when my mother died, my sister Tracy sent me an email and said, call me. And when I called, she said she was dead. So I'm in a cell at Lewisburg, and it's 2 a.m, and it's just oppressively hot. I'm in boxers and I'm pouring sweat, but my eyes are also leaking because I'm torn up because I miss my mom. And I got down out of bed and I wrote a poem to God. And I actually have the poem. It's called My Prayer. It's published now and all over the place. But I asked God to take what was ever left of me that was good and to use it to try to touch the world. I sucked as a criminal, James. There's no, I used the whole bank robbers blog and that whole angle, but I just used that to reinvent myself. And because I know that people are fascinated with people who go into banks and rob them. So I just traded on that. But my goal was to, I got $65 every other week from my sister. And I had a choice to spend it on honey buns and potato chips, or inedible content, as I like to say. And I spent it on that. I spent it on email credits, and I developed a relationship with Murder Slim Press and Steve Hussey, God bless him, who owns Murder Slim Press. And I became a writer. My plan was to gain some notoriety and some credibility and reinvent myself for one day eventually be released and transition as a mainstream novelist. Now, 12 weeks ago, I had 6 years left in prison to do. And now I'm here with you on a podcast. Praise God.
That's fantastic. Well, I think you don't necessarily need to have been a good bank robber for that to be a good story. I think being a bad bank robber is just, honestly, there's just as much mileage in that for a story as there is on being a good one. But look, I'm being light about this, Jeffrey, but nobody listening to this will not be batting for you and be impressed with where you've got to today, and I know none of this is easy, and it's been incredibly painful for you. So I'm making light of it, but I'm also at the same time, we're part of your story now, and we're going to be following it and wishing you the best and here to help you.
Well, I just want to say, just in case I don't get it in this interview, but I'm very grateful to self-publishing formula and the foundation. These scholarships are through the foundation are endowed or supported through different people. Mine is through you guys, through the self-publishing formula, and that really humbles me and makes me feel very special.
Wow,
So
you are.
Thank you very much.
You are. It's all about tomorrow now, isn't it, for you? And how did you start your writing? I mean, what sort of resources do you get on the inside? Do you get easy access to a computer?
Yes, the way that it all began is, I don't know, I believe in fate, but I'll tell you how it began. I walked out onto the tier, and out on the tier at Lewisburg, it was built in 1930, and there's no windows in the cells. The tier, there's a row of windows with bars across them, 6 foot tall, and there's a plastic lawn chair in front of each window. And I found a thick book called Writer's Market, that's published, and it lists every publisher, their genre, what they buy, how much they pay, their contact information, the writing guidelines, and I picked it up. And it was at the same time that I had said that prayer and asked God to open doors for me. And I just found a place that said Murder Slim Press, and it was grit-lit, and I hadn't written anything at that point. So I sent them a core links request on the computer. The way that it works when you're in federal prison is it's a company that manages the email, and there's a 2-hour lag time between sending and receiving on both ends. And you have to send a request to the individual, and they have to accept that they will communicate with the federal prisoner. And you can't do anything but text on the no images or any of that. So I sent Murder Slim Press a core links request, and they accepted. And all of the wannabe literati there who sat in the library writing hood novels and told me don't even try because publishers didn't mess with convicts. And they accepted my request, and they asked if I would write a story about being in prison. And my buddy is a capo, one of the 20 captains for the Genovese crime family in New York City, and
wow.
I call him Don Corleone when we blog. But he's just he's great, as long as you're not duct taped in the trunk of his car,
yes,
or playing penny a point gin with him because he cheats. But I wrote a story about him and I smuggling bananas out of the chow hall in our pants, called Prison Prose, and they bought that for $35.
Wow.
And that was the beginning. And I began to tell Steve Hussey stories from my life, and he created a blog and called it the Bank Robbers Blog. And there's about 8 years of free content, Steve. But that you can click on to Murder Slim Press and click onto my author's page and read. They're archived. It's basically a archive of my life and my life back.
That's an opportunity for you to learn how to write as well, though, isn't it? You're writing week in, week out for stuff. It was,
and I'll tell you, James, did you mention that blog writing is because I'm not traditionally trained, but what I did learn in hindsight is blog writing is you try to condense as much information, humor, emotion, wit, bullshit into the least amount that you can. And it serves you well when you write novels, because writing novels is telling stories within stories, and you have to be concise to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And writing the blogs helped with that.
Yeah.
So
that's
great.
I didn't
know it at the time.
I'm just having a look at them now. They look fascinating. So I'll have a read through those.
Well, I'll tell you one blog, November 30th, 2020. It's the last blog I did for them from prison. It's called Leaving Shawshank, and it explains what I just told you. And the one before that in September is called Urban Legends, and it talks about my time with Doc, my time with Angelo, Don Corleone, and some of the people I met. Whitey Bulger, met him, and before he committed suicide by inmate. But
so Jeffrey, what are your plans for writing?
My plans for writing are, I have a series called The Life of Riley, and book 1 is out on Amazon. And the way that I became a mainstream writer is kind of the same way that that's fascinating to me. In early 2019, I was finishing a book called Bank Robber Stories from the Life from Murder Slim Press, and I prayed and asked God to open doors for me to transition into mainstream writing. Well, I'm in my cell one day, and a guy named Michael Brabham comes by, and he's doing 30 years for meth and a gun. And he's my buddy, but he's like everybody else back there. He's strung out on this dope, and he has a syringe in his hand, and he asks me, he's frantic. He says, I can't get my shot into my neck. Will you please do this for me? And I don't do drugs. I haven't done them in over 12 years, but I have compassion in that setting. So I sat him down, wiped his neck off, did what he wanted. On his way out of the cell, he hands me a book, and he says, listen, you got to check this book out. It's badass. And the book was called My Brother's Destroyer, and it was by a guy named Clayton Lindemuth. And I'm like, okay. So I read it, and he's right. It's badass. And the characters, the tagline on the back is the death of one dog worth the life of 20 men. Well, I'm an animal lover. And so my answer was
yes.
absolutely.
I think lots of people say yes.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. So I read the book, and there's an email address in the front of the book for this Clayton Lindemuth guy. And I sent an email. I sent a core links request, and he answers, and we become friends.
Wow.
And I don't know, but he is a prolific self-publisher who does a bunch of these books. He sends me all of his books off Amazon, and we become friends. He has a Facebook group called Red Meat Lit Street Team, and he's introduced me to them. And now this is all when they think I have 6 years left. And so flash forward, I get out. Clayton drives 2 hours. 2 hours. 2 days after I get out, he drives 9 hours from Pennsylvania, and he gifts me a complete technology center. Computer with 2 monitors, a laptop, software that includes Scrivener and Canva Pro. Everything is run through Microsoft Office. He gave me not just a fishing boat, but a Ranger bass boat.
Wow.
And it gives me the ability to practice my craft. Now, I had Riley books 1 through 4. You asked me what my plans were. I plan to do the Riley series. I enjoy writing this series. Even though I wrote these books about 6 years ago now, I still haven't written book 5, the ending. I need to do that. But I plan to do that. I'm thinking of trying to maybe monetize some of the content that I did on the 8 years of blogs. But I sit here and I watch these series on Netflix scroll by when it's idle, and I realize that there's a need for content. And so I think that maybe there's some value in those blogs. In my misery and tragedy, there's some value.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I can see those going together and being a compendium. And
I just don't know how to do all that. But I didn't know how to do this, James, and I'm doing it. So
you'll learn. So you got access to a computer. You were able to write, and you completed 3 novels in prison.
I did 3 for Murder Slim Press, and I've got about 4 O'Reilly done, and I've got a couple other books that I've done that I don't know what I'm going to do with yet. One of them is called A Chicago Story. And are these all crime, prison based, or are you branching out from that a little bit? No. All the Rileys have nothing to do with prison. I had 2 genres. I call it the hey, look at the stupid criminal genre that I wrote in, and that's for Murder Slim. And when I transitioned into mainstream fiction writing, these are just stories fiction stories that I've created. So. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. We've got book. Presumably you're in the process now of preparing Riley 2 and 3 and 4 for release. I mean, they're written. Yes, and interesting and relevant to this interview and to the people who might see it. Play this cover for The Life of Riley, which is my screensaver on my phone and everything, and it It is the result of a cover contest on 99 designs.
Ah, okay.
Clay put up $300, and this was the winning submission. Well, flash forward a little, beautiful cover. I love it. I've talked to, I got some good insight though from both Stuart Bosch and who I didn't even know who I was talking to. I mean, I've got royalty here in my comment section. I don't even know who this guy is. And then Lucy Dawson told me who he was. I'm like, oh my God, you know, he went from Stuart to Mr. Bosch like that. But he gave me some good suggestions in the comment section. But the guy who did this cover is an artist on the Reedsy platform.
Ah.
So
great.
I will be, yes. And Mr. Ricardo Fayed over there, nice man. I have talked to him, and I guess he had led a certification for Reedsy Labs or something, but he's in the process. His name is Ivano Lago, and he's Italian, and he's a graphic design artist, and he's on my Facebook friends, and he's a cool dude.
So that's perfect. So he'll be able to do.
Working on the cover for Riley too. Yes.
Yeah, matching covers. Great. And what is life like for you, Jeff, when you come out? And what was that moment like, and that adjustment, which I guess you're still in, because it's weeks, really, isn't it?
I don't sleep, James.
I noticed that actually in our messaging that you don't sleep.
Yeah, I don't. I sleep maybe 1 or 2 hours a night, and I don't know. I call it PTID, post-traumatic incarceration disorder, but I'm still adjusting to it's like every day's Christmas, to be honest with you, but everything happens for a reason too. I came out when I did, where I did. I live with my sister, Tracy, and her husband, Mickey, who have just created this incredible cocoon of love for me. In my first 2 weeks out, I couldn't stop. Every time somebody did something nice for me, I'd start crying because the dissonance between the hatred that I lived in and the love that I'm shown now and continue to be shown. I'm wearing shoes that one of my readers that I've never met bought me in the middle of the night, a woman named Bobby Bozeman. Hi, Bobby. And because I hadn't bought clothes in 13 years, just an incredible amount of love from so many different directions. And it's still overwhelming. It's still humbling. And in the world of writing and self-publishing, the Riley in the writing is the horse and everything else is the cart. And so I've been doing a lot of cart stuff, and I need to get back on the horse and
do some writing.
And do some writing.
Correct. And you do need to start sleeping more as well.
I do. It's transcribing at this point. I'm transcribing Riley 2, and I'm going to talk to text for Riley 3 and 4. But I'm scared that I'll lose something in the creative process of talk to text. Yeah. But we'll see.
It takes a bit of getting used to, I think, dictation. But I think if you persevere at it, you should get back into your flow. So, did you handwrite those novels in prison?
I did.
Right.
I did. I write when I write double space margins. Like this is. That's all of it.
Okay.
That's Riley 2, 3, and 4. And I write double space margins, and then I go to sleep, and when I wake up, it's like my mind looks at it from a fresh perspective, and I go back and I edit between the lines, and then when I transcribe on email from that's a final editing process, and that's how I've done things. Now I have an editor now named Miss Gail Lambert, and she's wonderful. So what I do when I transcribe now, I do it in Word and I send it to her, and that's the first line editing process. Well, I'm the first line, she's the professional one, and then it comes back to me. And because editing is what makes the book, I've learned, and I'm learning. So
yeah, oh, that's great. Well, that's quite a task, isn't it? I mean, it's quite good how you've turned what could be just a laborious task of getting it off the paper into electronic form. You've turned that into part of the editing process each stage.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's good. So you've got your Riley books. You want to get back into writing now. You've got book 5 to write, and have you sort of set yourself a timetable for the next 6 to 12 months? I know it's only recently you've got the SPF Foundation stuff, but
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that Clay is just, man, such a smart dude. I don't know how else to put it. But what he did is he did two things. I have two screens. He set a timer, just a little cheesy timer program that starts at 30 or 60, whatever you set it, and you're writing, so you know you're in that zone and you stay there. But he also did a spreadsheet in Excel that tracks my word count a day of what I do. My personal word count of what I try to do is 3,000 words a day.
That's good.
And that's what I did in prison. And in prison, it's great therapy. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. When everybody around you is killing each other and shooting dope into their neck, and you're just sitting there with a pen in your own little bubble, it's incredibly great therapy. So I try to track all of that, and I haven't been proficient in that. A lot of it I've put off in my head to the start of Riley 3. I have 2 chapters left to transcribe of Riley 2, and I'm working with Ivano on the cover. And then when I launch into Riley 3, I'm going to start a new process that involves talk to text and very stringent writing schedule.
It sounds like writing was a survival mechanism for you as much as anything else.
It was. It is. It still it vents my crazy, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Because it allows me to go into my own little world, and the characters that I create, I dream about sometimes. They come to me in my dreams as people. And General Sherman, he's a bulldog on the front of the cover of Riley who drinks Guinness Stout and lives in a pub. Yeah, he's a good boy.
Good for General Sherman. Well, I'm no psychologist, but I imagine also very important, Jeffrey, is having that consistency. So you were writing in prison. That was something you loved and you wanted to do. You're out of that environment now, which is a huge and difficult, and we know from history, transition for people. And yet the writing is the consistent bit. So that bit's the same for you. Just at a little bit nicer surroundings.
Also, I mentioned every 2 weeks I talk to a therapist, just as part of my my reacclimation process.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, I mean, we could talk a lot about prison and your life up until this point, but what I'm really interested in is the next 10 years for Jeffrey Frye and Jeffrey P. Frye appearing on Amazon. We're so excited for you, Jeffrey. We're happy to be a part of your story. We're here to help. I know you're going to get a lot of support from everyone in the community, like we all do, right? I mean, I've had huge amounts of help from people getting my first novel out into the world, which should be soon. So yeah, we're on board the Jeffrey Frye train for the next few years.
Well, thank you. And I would like to also, I've never met him, and I've tried to emulate his hairstyle a time or two, but I would like to thank Mark Dawson very much for everything that he has put together. He has put together just an incredible thing with self-publishing formula. And I've never met him. Don't know that I will ever meet him, but it doesn't matter. I want to thank him. I'm very grateful to him for what he's done and how it has affected my life, and it is making my life better. And I thank him for it.
Wow, that's very kind.
And I thank you.
Well, at least I can do, but he's changed my life as well, I tell you. But he's changed a lot of lives, and I'll pass that on to Mark. And at some point, Jeffrey, we will meet in person somewhere, maybe 20 books or whatever, and it'll be great to share some freedom with you.
Cool. That's awesome.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There you go. There's a different world, isn't it? You can't. We see it on TV, on films, but that's where that kind of world exists on TV, being inside a state penitentiary and having people murdered in cells nearby, which happened to Jeffrey. And yet there I am talking to him, and this was his life. It must be like that first time you visit New York and it looks like you're on a film set. It must feel the same going into those prisons because you see it's so familiar, and yet the reality of living that life, I don't know. I don't suppose many people come out of it unscarred one way or another, Mark.
No, God, absolutely not. No, it's a scary proposition. So it's great that he's out, and even better that he's found something that he's good at and enjoys, and hopefully this could be the career that gives him the life he wants. That's let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do everything we can for him. We'll definitely keep in touch with Jeffrey. It'd be nice to share a beer with him at some point in the future in person. Yes, it was quite funny. He said he was a bad bank robber. I mean, I think his addiction led to his crimes, but but he got caught. But he said he wasn't armed, which is probably a good thing. He probably would have got 20 or 30 years rather than 12. But I think he just walked into the bank with a bit of paper and hoped they'd give him some money, and some of them did. But yeah, pretty low point in his life. And then he had enforced by, I was going to say Her Majesty's pleasure. That's what we'd say in the UK, but at the president's pleasure, enforced period of time to reflect on that and sort himself out. And there's no, I hope I'm a reasonable judge of character, but meeting and talking to Jeffrey, he seems like a thoroughly decent guy who's going to make the most of the rest of his life. You can feel that. More motivation to do that perhaps than we have, Mark, in our mollycoddled middle-class lives we've had.
Absolutely.
But we try to make the best of it. Yeah. Good. Okay. I think that's it. It's time to let the laughing gnome go over there.
F off.
I'm
very tempted there to laughing gnome pays your mortgage, you mother effer.
But from this distance, people can't see the shot I can see, but you're right in the corner and you've got this pointy beard and a hat. If you held a fishing rod,
I think you better get off this quite quickly, or you might get sacked. This is the last show in the self-published. There will be no more. No more podcasts. This is it. It's over. We're done.
Well, good luck presenting it by yourself.
Yes.
Good. Anyway, with my career in tatters and on that career bombshell, all that remains for me to say is thank you very much indeed to our guest Jeffrey for joining us. Thank you to all our foundation winners and to our donors, and to Lucy especially for organising everything. That's it for Foundation for another year, and that's it for this episode for this week. All that remains for me to say is it's a goodbye from him
and a goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.